One of the most complex sequences to occur in Free Guy is the moment Ryan Reynolds' titular character, Guy, is being chased through a construction site, which was an all-CG environment, with the scene bending reality as Guy jumps from floor to floor with inhuman ability. The VFX for this sequence was performed by Digital Domain, who not only created the interior and exterior of the building, with the actors being shot in front of a green screen and physical set pieces, but they created a digital version of Guy using a blend of high-res scans and motion capturing Reynolds' performance. We spoke to Digital Domain's VFX supervisor, Nikos Kalaitzidis, who has over 20 years of experience in the industry and, along with Free Guy, has worked on the likes of Titanic, Shazam, and Spider-Man: Homecoming. He gave us some insight into the scene and how it was difficult to create something that is outside the world we know and pull off a thing they've never seen before.
We had to come up with a way where, how do we look at something like this, which we've never seen before, and kind of make it feel real, right? Because we've, in our minds, never seen a building transform and move and have certain floors that rotate and assemble itself with girders so people could run up the girders as a staircase to chase somebody. Well, what we had to do was try to make sure that when all the building parts are moving, we wanted to do it to scale and at a speed which kind of makes sense. So when you see the speed and you see the characters running, the building is moving in that same sort of speed and rate, so the scale kind of remains the same. You know, to try to create an animation where you've never seen it's kind of mind-boggling. And of course, you would instantly know that it's not real, but then how do you make it as real as possible by using certain speeds and scales to be close to the physics that we know in this world.
But this is just one instance of Free Guy using mind-blowing visuals and cutting-edge technology to create a cinematic spectacle. In this video, we will continue to take a look at all of the work that went into the world of building Free City and give you an exclusive behind-the-scenes look at the movie Free Guy. So, Free Guy might be an amazing visual spectacle with an original premise at its core, but how exactly did the filmmakers and Digital Domain build the world of Free City? As part of the movie takes place in a video game, first of all, there was a lot of soul-searching in terms of what the visual aesthetic and style should be in gameplay.
What they've decided was that when they wanted to differentiate what the gameplay is that they're seeing on the monitor with live action, there were too identical, and they wanted to make some sort of differentiation between the two. So as an audience, when you're looking at the gameplay on someone's monitor, it's clearly a game and not being confused that is live action.
When it came to the video game style the movie wanted to emulate, they took reference from two massive video game franchises, Grand Theft Auto and Fortnite.
And it really has that sense and tone in the movie of what's happening of the game in Free City, of stealing cars and blowing things up, and it has a very similar style as Grand Theft Auto in that manner.
In total, Digital Domain created just shy of 90 3D environments, with there being a load of digital characters they had to create, such as Ryan Reynolds' Guy, Channing Tatum's Badass, and a whole host of cameos.
So there's a portion in gameplay where they've asked us to create a gameplay version of Blake Lively, where she is actually kicking Guy in the private jewels as he falls down and she walks away.
I don't understand.
There's another portion of it where there was photographs that we did of their little daughter, and she's walking across the street, and Guy kind of grabs her from the middle of the street from getting hit by a truck and saves her. And so there was a lot of these cameos and moments, and a lot of fun moments that we had with the filmmakers actually creating these gameplay cameos and little inserts everywhere.
With production taking place in Boston and with photorealism being heavily emphasized by the filmmakers, Digital Domain had to create a photoreal version of the city streets using live-action photography to provide a traditional VFX and set extensions.
And then on top of that, we had to create the gameplay assets of what the city is that needed to be very close to those Boston streets that were photographed and LiDAR'd. We've created a city kit batch of storefronts and buildings that we kind of kit batch, change textures, made it look more or less the general look of the street of Boston, and wherever we'd look at certain photographs, we'd make sure that the textures and the storefronts had the same colors and the same sort of layout.
For the VFX team, it's always good to have a great amount of live-action photography and intricate set design when working on a project, something Digital Domain had in abundance for Free Guy. Along with this, Digital Domain had a close relationship with Sean Levy and the rest of the production, heading out to set, pitching visual ideas, and working on the video game element provided to them. One of the visuals they successfully pitched was for the, what they call, frozen moment, as Guy is in the multiplayer lounge and the game is reset by the developers, with everything glitching before turning white.
He decides to reboot the game in order for Guy to lose his AI memory and to reset himself as back to being a non-player character. And then to do that, we had to come up with a look of what that reboot looks like. And that had to be a spectacle of visual effects of some kind.
When coming up with what this would look like, Nikos was inspired by a display he saw in New York on New Year's called the Art Tech House, an art display centering on machine hallucinations where they pump visuals into the machine, which then uses artificial intelligence to come up with its own idea of what the city and buildings look like. Nikos thought it would be cool to emulate this aesthetic, as well as glitches and low-res textures from 80s video games. To pull this off, they used a relatively new technique called data moshing, using the program Houdini, where movement in one layer of footage is applied to another, rendering low-res texture maps while combining it with Nuke. But data moshing isn't the only example of Free Guy using cutting-edge technology.
I'm terrified.
Ooh, let's do this.
While Digital Domain had a high-res digital asset of Guy, they didn't have such a good quality asset when it came to the rest of the cast, such as Channing Tatum's badass.
Well, Sean wanted it to look more like Channing. He wanted it to look more photoreal because we just weren't cutting it. So at that point in time, we looked into our research department and we spoke to our guys that were developing Charlatan at the time, that more or less is a tool that kind of mimics deepfake. And what we did was that we took some of those tools and we've taken all the data and the images from Channing Tatum and we gave it to the machine for machine learning. And it took about 3-4 days for the machine to learn and to understand his facial movements and his innuendos and how he blinks and just learning his face. And then after that, we applied it to our final comp on our renders. And the look became much more photoreal, and it looked like Channing Tatum right out of the box.
But there was one sequence that came a little less easy, and that was the epic one-shot sequence at the start of the film. When it came to comedy in the movie, there was never enough VFX attention to detail and antics that could be inserted into a scene, so for the opening sequence, the filmmakers and Digital Domain threw in the kitchen sink. The sequence starts with Badass descending into the city, which was pulled off via a combination of digital and practical effects, with the actor placed in a wire harness while suspended by a retractable crane. To have Badass land in the waiting convertible seamlessly, Digital Domain used a CG parachute and a digidouble of Channing Tatum to pull off a stunt that would have been impossible otherwise. As the car then speeds off, the filmmakers used a multi-camera rig and a crane on the car itself to film the streets of Boston and against green screens before Digital Domain took that real footage of the car and the actors and created a new set consisting of digihumans and a CG car.
The shot was over 2,700 frames, and when we did the first version of it, as many antics that we put into it and all the gags that were happening, there still wasn't enough. So we always had to put more detail, more antics, more cars that are crashing, motorcycle crashing, explosions, helicopters, anything that we could just throw into it. We just threw in the whole kitchen sink, and there was just never enough detail or comedy that we could just make sure that we could get to where Sean Levy had his vision of what this should be.
The movie may have been a challenge, but Nikos said it was a lot of fun, and there was something special about working on the film. In regards to Ryan Reynolds, Nikos said that the actor was really accommodating to everyone in VFX to help them to get what they needed.
So he was really a pleasure to work with.
With Free Guy using cutting-edge technology, wonderful VFX, and photorealism, and just being a fun collaborative project, the end result is visually rich. But not only this, with Free Guy opening the doors to what could happen in movies, we have only really just scratched the surface as to what comes next.